John Davis stepped onto the polished marble floor of the Asterian palace with a steady breath. He had never walked into such an unusual place. Tall spires soared overhead, and glowing lanterns cast gentle light along the halls. His uniform felt stiff in the strange air, but he held his chin high. This was his first meeting with Queen Azura. A soft voice called his name. "Sir John Davis," it said. Lavra Kim, the human aide, stood nearby. She offered him a small smile. John nodded. He followed her through a grand archway carved with swirling vines. Beyond, a wide chamber opened. Tapestries lined the walls, each showing scenes of Asterian history. Queen Azura stood at the far end of the room. She wore a simple silver gown that shimmered like moonlight. Her pale skin had a hint of lavender, and her hair flowed like liquid starlight. Others called her cold or distant, but John felt a flutter in his chest. She looked at him with curious eyes. "Your Majesty," John said, bowing respectfully. His words sounded small in the vast space. Azura had a quiet grace as she returned his bow. She inclined her head once, then asked him to rise. Lavra translated each word with care. John stood and met Azura's gaze. She was smaller in person than he expected, but her presence filled the room. He tried to speak but found his mind empty. Suddenly he blurted out, "You're so lovely. I'm speechless." The chamber fell silent. John felt a flush creep up his neck. Azura's hand went to her cheek. She turned away, her long braids swinging behind her. He covered his face with his hand and hoped the stone floor would open beneath him. Lavra gave him a gentle cough. She guided him to a low bench near a glowing fountain. He seated himself, heart pounding. Azura remained turned away for a moment, then slowly faced him again. Her eyes glowed softly. "Why did you say that?" she asked. Her voice was kind but curious, not mocking, Lavra translated. John swallowed hard. He tried to find polite words. "I did not mean to offend," he said. "I have heard many stories of your wisdom and strength. I did not know how to greet you properly. The first thing I felt was ... astonishment. Your beauty is unlike anything I have seen. That surprised me." Azura studied him. Her lips curved in a faint smile, Lavra translated. The queen stepped closer to the fountain. She brushed her hand through the water, sending ripples across its surface. "We Asterians do not often speak of beauty," Azura said. "We value duty and knowledge. But I find your words ... refreshing." She paused, and the soft sound echoed in the hall. "Thank you, John Davis." John bowed again. He looked up and saw a hint of color on her cheeks. She was not like any ruler he had met. His breath caught. "May I show you the Hall of Stars?" Lavra asked. "The queen wishes to share its history with you." Azura nodded. John rose, still staring at her. They walked down a corridor lit by floating orbs. Stars were painted on the domed ceiling, each representing a distant world. Azura pointed to one. "This star marks the origin of Asterian civilization." Lavra translated. "It guided our ancestors to new lands." Azura's finger traced the path across the sky. John listened intently. He tried to focus on the story, but every so often his gaze drifted to Azura's profile. They reached a balcony overlooking a river of light. The water glowed like liquid stars. Cool air brushed John's face. Azura stood beside him, silent. Finally she spoke. "You come from Earth, a distant blue world," Lavra said. "Tell me, what is it like?" John smiled, relieved. He spoke of oceans, tall trees, and green fields. He described simple things, morning dew on grass, laughter among friends, the warmth of the sun. Azura listened, her head tilted. When he finished, Azura closed her eyes for a moment. "Your world sounds peaceful and alive," Lavra translated. "It sounds lovely as the blossom of dawn." John's heart swelled. He chuckled softly. "It has its faults, but it has beauty and hope. I wish you could see it someday." Double quotes. Azura opened her eyes and met his gaze. Her lips curved into a gentle smile. "Perhaps one day you will show me," Lavra translated. She stepped back and gestured. "Toward the hall, there is much more to share," Azura said. Lavra translated. John nodded. Together they moved to the next chamber. As they walked, John felt a soft warmth in his chest. He had begun with fear and respect. Now he felt something new, admiration and something like wonder. When they entered the Hall of Memories, Azura stood before a crystal wall that glowed with shifting images. She raised her hand. The images changed to show a battle long past. She spoke in her tongue, and Lavra translated. "This is the day we formed our alliance with the Star Peoples," Azura said. "It was a day of sacrifice and unity." She traced the images with her finger. John watched the scenes of heroes and diplomats. He saw humans and Asterians standing side by side. He thought of the weight of his mission. His people hoped for peace, but danger lurked beyond. At the end of the hall, Azura turned and faced him. Her pale eyes glowed. "Thank you for listening," Lavra translated. "I trust you will honor our history." John bowed deeply. "I will, Your Majesty. I promise to do my best for peace between our worlds." Azura inclined her head. A moment later, Lavra spoke again. "The Queen invites you to stay for dinner in the Lunar Garden. She wishes to learn more of your customs." John smiled. "I would be honored, Your Majesty." As they left the hall, Lavra guided him through tall doors into a courtyard filled with silver trees. Lanterns hung from branches, glowing softly. Petals drifted across the ground. Azura walked beside him, her robes brushing the grass. John felt the cool night air and the gentle glow of moonlight. He turned to Azura. "I have one more question," he said. "May I call you Azura?" Azura paused and looked at him. Then she smiled, just once. Lavra translated, and John felt his pulse quicken. He had never felt so alive. "I would welcome that, John." "Davis," Lavra translated her words. Azura's cheeks glowed faintly. John nodded and fell silent, content to walk by her side, under the silver trees. Two strangers from distant worlds began a friendship filled with promise and gentle wonder. Their story was only beginning. John Davis woke early the next morning. He stepped into the courtyard where silver trees swayed in a gentle breeze. Lanterns from last night still glowed faintly. Dew sparkled on the petals. Azura stood by the fountain, watching the water flow. She wore a light blue robe that matched the sky. When she saw John, she smiled softly. He returned her smile and bowed his head. Lavra brought a tray of food. She set down bowls of fruit and pastries made from glowing grains. The fruit tasted sweet and warm. Azura showed John how to eat it gently, holding each piece by the stem. John laughed when a drop of juice slipped onto his sleeve. Azura giggled too. The sound was like wind chimes. They shared simple words about taste and texture. After breakfast, Azura guided John into a long hall filled with glass cases. Each held an artifact from a different era. One case held a small crystal that pulsed with light. Azura explained its meaning. Lavra translated her words. John listened closely and reached out to touch the case. He traced the lines carved into the crystal with his finger. A sudden alarm broke the quiet. A low hum filled the hall. Azura closed her eyes and listened. John stood still. The hum grew louder, then faded. Lavra looked worried. "It is only a test of the palace shields," she said. Azura nodded and placed her hand on John's shoulder. He felt calm at her touch. Azura led him to a balcony overlooking the city. Tall spires rose like trees. Bright lights dotted the buildings. Beyond them, 2 moons hung in the sky. John stared in wonder. "Your city is so bright," he said. Azura tilted her head. Lavra translated. She told him that the light came from a river of energy beneath the city. It fed each building with gentle power. They walked through quiet streets toward a dome made of glass and metal. Inside, people gathered for a stargazing ceremony. Candles of blue flame floated in the air. Soft music drifted around them. Azura held John's hand and led him to a seat near the front. He settled beside her, feeling the warmth of her skin. When the ceremony began, Azura spoke in her language. Lavra translated each line. She called upon the stars to guide their people. She spoke of hope, unity, and peace. John felt a sense of calm wash over him. He looked at Azura's face by candlelight. Her cheeks glowed with pride. After the prayers, participants released small lanterns into the sky. Each lantern carried a wish. Azura and John held theirs together. "For peace between our worlds," he whispered. Azura nodded and released the lantern. They watched it rise until it joined the others. In its light, they felt connected. When the ceremony ended, a soft song began. Dancers moved in circles, their bodies glowing with pale light. Azura stood and offered her hand to John. He took it and rose. They stepped into the circle. At first John felt awkward in his stiff uniform. Azura guided his steps. She moved with grace. He followed, and soon he let the music guide him. The dance ended, and the dancers bowed to each other. John and Azura smiled. "Thank you for teaching me," he said. Lavra translated. Azura lowered her gaze. "You learn quickly," Lavra said. John felt his face warm. He looked at Azura's eyes, and in them he saw kindness. Azura then invited John to see the palace gardens. They walked down a path lined with glowing flowers. Petals drifted around their feet like snow. The air smelled sweet. Azura pointed to a flower with royal purple petals. Lavra said it was called the moon bloom. It opened only when the moons were high. John knelt to smell it. Its scent was soft and cool. As they walked, John asked about Azura's people. Lavra translated. Azura spoke of a long history of exploration and discovery. She said Asterians respected knowledge above all. John thought of Earth's libraries and museums. He felt proud of his own people's thirst for learning. They reached a small pavilion with a gentle stream. Water flowed over smooth stones. Azura sat on a carved bench and patted the space beside her. John sat down, careful with his uniform. They watched the water for a few moments without speaking. John cleared his throat. "I want to share a song from Earth," he said. Lavara translated. He hummed a melody, simple and slow. Azura listened, her head tilted. When he finished, she reached into her robe and pulled out a small device. It played a soft tone in response. Lavra said it was her people's way of honoring music. John smiled and hummed again. Azura joined with her own melody. Their voices mixed and filled the pavilion. Lavra said the melodies sounded harmonious. John felt joy at their shared song. When they stopped, Azura placed her hand over her heart. Lavra translated, "Your song is beautiful." Light clouds drifted above. The moons shone like silver coins. John and Azura watched them rise. The air turned cool. Azura wrapped her shawl around John's shoulders. He held it close. He felt safe with her. Hours passed. Time seemed to slow. Lavra clapped softly and said the palace awaited their return. John stood and offered his arm. Azura took it. Together they walked back through the garden. Before they reached the palace gates, Azura stopped. She turned to John and looked into his eyes. Lavra said her words, "I have enjoyed this day more than any other. Thank you for sharing your world." John felt his chest swell. He bowed his head and spoke gently. "The pleasure is mine, Your Majesty." Azura's lips curved in a shy smile. She turned away and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. Lavra stepped forward and invited John to rest before dinner. John nodded and offered Azura his arm. She took it and leaned against him as they walked. As John entered his quarters that night, he thought of Azura's smile. He felt hope. Their worlds were close now, connected by a day of simple wonders. He lay on his bed and closed his eyes, dreaming of silver gardens and lunar songs. The future felt bright. John Davis woke to the soft glow of dawn streaming through his quarters. He stretched and glanced at the small clock on the table. It was time for the embassy meeting. He dressed in his uniform and took a deep breath. Today would be his chance to speak with Queen Azura about the treaties. When John entered the council chamber, he saw delegates from many worlds seated around a long table. Their faces were serious. Azura sat at the head, her silver hair caught in the light. She greeted him with a small nod. John bowed and took his seat beside Lavra Kim. The chief diplomat, Taran Moreau, opened the meeting. She spoke of trade routes and resource sharing. Lavra translated each point. John listened, but his mind drifted to Azura. She leaned forward, listening intently. Her eyes shone with interest. Suddenly, a delegate from the Calvarian Empire slammed his fist on the table. His voice boomed. He demanded more mining rights on Earth. Taryn tried to calm him. John heard anger in the Calvarian's words. The room grew tense. Azura raised her hand. The chamber fell silent. She spoke calmly and evenly. Lavra translated. She argued that balance and respect should guide their choices. She reminded them of the pact of unity sworn centuries ago. Her voice was gentle but firm. John felt pride swell in his chest. He watched her calm the room. The Calvarian delegate glared but fell silent. After a moment, another delegate, Jenna Simmons from the Cyrene Federation, supported Azura's words. She spoke of cooperation and peace. Soon, more voices joined. The meeting ended with an agreement to form a new council for fair resource sharing. Taryn turned to John. Your counsel is valued, Sir John. Thank you for supporting the Queen, he bowed. Lavra translated. Outside the chamber, John and Azura walked through a hall lit by pale blue crystals. John glanced at her. She looked calm. Again, but he sensed a shadow of worry in her eyes. He stopped and looked at her directly. Your Majesty, he began. Are you all right? Lavra translated his words. Azura paused. She touched the crystal wall and closed her eyes. I worry for my people, Lavra translated her reply. Some fear that Earth's resources will run dry. They blame us for interference. She opened her eyes and looked at John. Your world is far away. What will happen if our alliance fails? John felt the weight of her question. He reached out and gently touched her hand. Lavra translated, Our alliance is strong. We share hope, knowledge, and respect. I will do everything I can to protect it. Azura nodded and squeezed his hand. John offered a small smile. They reached the palace gardens. Early sun warmed the flowers. Azura led him to a stone bench near a fountain. Petals drifted on the water. She gestured for him to sit. He settled beside her. Tell me of your people's fears, John said softly. Lavra translated. Azura sighed. She looked at the fountain. Some believe Asteria grows weak. They fear change. They fear our bond with Earth. She paused. They do not understand how much this alliance means to me. John thought of his home on Earth. People there dreamed of new worlds and new friends. He said, change can be good. It brings growth and learning. Your people have faced challenges before, Lavra translated. Azura's gaze turned to him. On Earth, how do your people face fear? John looked at his hands. We come together. We talk, share stories, and find solutions. We help each other, Lavra translated. Azura studied his face. She nodded slowly. Perhaps we should bring our people together. Let them speak and learn from one another. Lavra translated. John smiled. A meeting of cultures. Music, food, and stories from both worlds. It might ease fears. Lavra translated. Azura's lips curved in a small smile. Yes, I will propose it at the next council meeting. Lavra translated. They rose and walked through the garden. Azura stopped before a pale pink blossom. She bent to smell it. John watched her. Her eyelashes fluttered. He cleared his throat. May I speak freely? Lavra translated. Azura nodded. John took a breath. I admire your courage and kindness. When you spoke in the council, you gave hope. Your people trust you, and so do I, Lavra translated. Azura looked at him, her cheeks hinting at color. She reached for his hand. Your words give me strength, John Davis, Lavra translated. Azura's eyes shone. I trust you. Thank you for standing with me. She bowed her head slightly. John bowed in return. They walked back to the palace. The sun climbed higher. John felt warm inside. He had found a friend and ally in Queen Azura. He knew the road ahead would be hard, but together they could face it. As they entered the palace doors, Lavra turned to John. She spoke quietly. There is a message awaiting you. The ambassador from Earth wishes to speak with you. John nodded. Azura watched him, her gaze gentle. John stepped into the antechamber. A tall figure in a white uniform waited. He approached and offered his hand. Ambassador Robert Hamilton, the man said. I have news from home. John felt his chest tighten. Earth's news always carried weight. He took Hamilton's hand. Tell me, please, he said. Lavra translated Hamilton's words. Azura watched from the doorway. Hamilton's expression was serious. Lavra translated. There have been protests on Earth. Some groups oppose the alliance. They plan to disrupt your mission. John swallowed. He felt a chill. Azura stepped forward and touched his arm. Lavra translated, We will face this together. John looked at Azura and felt hope return. Then we must act swiftly, John said. Lavra translated. Hamilton nodded. I will gather our council. We must respond with reason and compassion. Lavra translated. John turned to Azura. Will you join us in speaking to our people? He asked. Lavra translated. Azura's gaze was steady. I will stand with you, John Davis. Lavra translated. They left the chamber together. A new challenge lay before them, but neither faced it alone. As they walked through the palace, John felt the quiet strength of their bond. Their story was not just of two worlds, but of two hearts united in purpose and respect. Part 4 that afternoon, John Davis met Queen Azura in the palace's war room. Maps and charts covered long tables. Lavra Kim waited at the head of the room. She showed John and Azura to the table. Guards stood along the walls, silent and watchful. Azura touched a map showing Earth and Asteria. Lavra translated her words. We must prepare for possible conflict. The borders of the outer colonies are under threat. She pointed to a red area where star pirates attacked supply ships. John studied the map. He ran his finger along the trade routes. We can reinforce our defenses there, he said. Lavra translated. He tapped a spot near the Delta relay station. If we boost the shields and deploy patrols, we can protect incoming ships. Azura considered his plan. Lavra translated her reply. You think like a strategist. I trust your judgment. She smiled faintly, and John felt warmth at her words. He pointed to another location, a small mining outpost. They need evacuation protocols. He said, We can set up a safe zone nearby and transport civilians by shuttle, Lavra translated. Azura nodded and traced the route on the map. Good, then we send the signal codes to all commanders. While they worked, Lavra received a message. She looked at it and frowned. The supply convoy is behind schedule. Pirates may have damaged it. Azura's face darkened. John placed a hand on hers. We will find them, he said. Lavra translated. Azura took a breath. Prepare to launch rescue. Teams at once, Lavra translated. Soldiers at the door saluted and left the room. John and Azura stayed behind. He looked at her. Are you afraid? He asked quietly. Lavra translated. Azura shook her head. Fear can guide us if we use it well, but I trust our people and your support. She smiled softly. John bowed his head. Thank you for trusting me, he said. Lavra translated. Azura's eyes glowed with gratitude. She reached out and touched his shoulder. John felt steady calm. They left the war room and walked onto a balcony overlooking the docking bay. 2 shuttles stood ready. Crews loaded. Medical supplies and shields? Azura watched with quiet focus. You have changed the tide of this mission, a blue-uniformed commander said. Lavra translated his words. He bowed to Azura and to John. Azura nodded graciously. John felt pride and respect. As the shuttles prepared to launch, Azura turned to John. Come with me, she said. Lavra translated. She led him down a corridor to a private viewing chamber. Large windows faced the bay. Through the glass, they saw the shuttles. Lights glowed and engines hummed. John placed his hand on the cool glass. Azura stood beside him, silent. John broke the quiet. Thank you for sharing this with me, he said. Lavra translated. Azura looked at him. You have given me hope, Lavra translated her words. Hope is the greatest gift. Azura's cheeks glowed faintly. They watched as the first shuttle lifted off. Light reflected on the glass, blending their silhouettes. John turned to Azura. I believe we will succeed, he said. Lavra translated. Azura's hand found his. Together, she replied. Lavra translated. John felt a surge of strength. He nodded when the shuttles vanished beyond the horizon. Azura and John left the chamber. Halls were quiet as they returned to the palace heart. John felt a soft glow in his chest, a promise of unity beyond conflict. Later that evening, they met for dinner in the lunar garden. Lanterns floated above, and petals drifted on the paths. Azura wore a dark blue gown. John arrived with a gift, a small wooden box containing Earth's music device. He opened it and played a song from home. Soft notes filled the garden. Azura closed her eyes, absorbing the melody. Lavra translated her words. Music always brings peace. She smiled and reached for John's hand. He held it gently. As they dined, John spoke of Earth's efforts to unite in crisis. Azura shared stories of her ancestors' battles. They found comfort in each other's words. When dessert arrived, Azura presented him with a silver pendant in the shape of the moon bloom. Lavra translated, "For courage and friendship." John accepted it with gratitude. He placed it around his neck. Azura single quotes S eyes shone. "Wear it always," Lavra translated. John touched the pendant and looked at her. "I will, Azura." Lavra translated. Under the moonlight, two hearts stood together, ready to face whatever came next. John Davis awoke to the soft hum of the palace. Sunlight filtered through the curtains of his chamber. Today was important. The joint cultural event would take place in the grand amphitheater. He dressed carefully in a suit that blended Earth and Asterian styles. As he stepped into the hallway, Lavra Kim greeted him. "Good morning, Sir John," she said. "The Queen waits in the garden." John nodded and followed her. The lunar garden was bright with morning dew. Moon blooms glowed faintly among silver leaves. Queen Azura stood by a marble bench, watching a pair of glowing birds in flight. When she saw John, she smiled. Her pale cheeks glowed. "Good morning, John Davis," Lavra translated. Azura bowed her head slightly. John bowed and met her gaze. "Good morning, Your Majesty. I hope you slept well." Lavra translated. Azura single quotes S eyes crinkled at the corners. "I slept peacefully," Lavra translated her words. She stepped aside to reveal a small scroll on the bench. "This is the program for today. We will present music, stories, and food from our worlds." Lavra translated. John picked up the scroll and unrolled it. Simple symbols and human words aligned in two columns. He saw times for speeches, dances, and a closing prayer. Azura joined him and read over his shoulder. Lavra translated her soft voice. "This event is the first of its kind. I believe it will bring our people closer." John's heart warmed. He said, "I agree. Unity starts with understanding." Lavra translated. Azura nodded, her silver hair shining. Together they walked along a path lined with glowing lanterns. Gardeners tended to flower beds of pale blue petals. Soon, they reached the grand amphitheater. It was shaped like a crescent moon with seats carved from white crystal. Delegates and citizens from Earth and Asteria filled the rows. John looked for familiar faces from Earth's delegation. He saw Ambassador Robert Hamilton and several cultural envoys. As they took their seats beside Azura, a hush fell over the crowd. A tall elder from Asteria stepped forward. He spoke in a gentle voice. Lavra translated, "Today we honor two worlds joined in peace." He raised his hands. "May our shared songs and stories light the way." John felt a ripple of excitement. He stood and bowed to the audience. "Thank you, respected elder," Lavra translated. Then John spoke in Asterian, slowly and clearly. Lavra smiled and repeated his words. "I honor the Asterian people and the people of Earth. May we learn from each other and grow in friendship." A round of soft applause rose. Next, a human musician stepped to the stage. She played a simple melody on a stringed instrument. Her tune blended with floating notes from Asterian crystal flutes. John listened as the melodies wove together. He glanced at Azura. Her eyes closed as she absorbed the music. When the piece ended, the audience cheered. John clapped and Lavra thanked the musicians. The next act was a dance. Asterian dancers in flowing robes moved like drifting clouds. Human dancers joined, their steps steady and bold. Together they formed circles and lines. John watched how Earth rhythms and Asterian grace intertwined. After the dance, it was time for stories. John had prepared a tale from Earth's history. He stepped forward and began, "Long ago, people on Earth built a great lighthouse by the sea. Lavra translated his words for the Asterian crowd. He told of light guiding ships through storms. He spoke simply, his voice steady. Azura listened intently. When he finished, she rose and bowed deeply. Lavra translated, "In our history we build guiding beacons too. These lights lead us through darkness." "Thank you for sharing your story." John bowed again. He felt connected to every person in the amphitheater. The final act was a feast in the courtyard. Tables were filled with dishes from both worlds. Glowing fruits from Asteria sat beside bread and cheese from Earth. The air smelled sweet and warm. John and Azura walked among the tables, tasting foods and meeting guests. Children laughed as they tried alien fruits. Elders nodded in approval at Earth's simple dishes. John helped an elderly Asterian woman with silver hair try a slice of apple. She closed her eyes and smiled. "Delicious," Lavara translated her words. The woman patted John's hand. Azura watched with pride. John turned to her. "You have created something wonderful," he said quietly. Lavara translated. Azura nodded, her cheeks warmed. As the sun set, lanterns rose into the sky. Each carried hopes and dreams. John and Azura sent theirs together. He watched the lantern climb until it blended with stars. Azura stood close. He felt her warmth at his side. Suddenly a shout rose from the crowd. A group of protesters had slipped through security. They held signs against the Alliance. Their voices were loud and angry. Tension crackled in the air. John took Azura's hand. "Stay calm," he whispered. Lavra translated. Azura nodded, her face steady. John stepped forward and raised his voice. "Please, hear us," he called. "We stand here to share peace, culture, and friendship. We invite you to join us, not to divide us." Lavra translated his plea. The protesters hesitated. They had not expected a direct answer. Azura stepped beside John. She spoke firmly in her language, and Lavra translated, "We respect your concerns, but violence and anger do not build bridges. Join us in dialogue. Let us answer your questions." The protest leader lowered his sign. Lavra translated, "We came with fear, but you show us respect. We will listen." John felt relief wash over him. The protesters let their signs fall. The crowd cheered. Musicians began to play again. Dancers returned to the stage. The feast resumed. Children danced among tables. John and Azura stood together, smiling. Later, as the lanterns faded, John and Azura walked along a quiet path by the river of light. The water glowed softly. Azura turned to John. "Today was a triumph," Lavar translated. "You saved the event with your words." She placed her hand on his arm. John shook his head. "We did it together," Lavar translated. Azura looked at him, her eyes shining. John stopped and faced her. "Azura, he began. Lavra held her breath. Azura smiled gently. "Speak freely," Lavra translated her encouragement. John took a deep breath. "I feel more alive here with you than I ever felt on Earth. Your kindness and strength inspire me. May I ask, will you walk with me beyond this event?" Lavra translated. His heart pounding. Azura single quotes S cheeks glowed with lavender warmth. She reached out and took his hand. Lavra translated. "John Davis, I would be honored. Your friendship is precious to me." John felt warmth flood his being. He smiled and bowed. Azura bowed too. Together they continued along the glowing river, united in friendship and something deeper. The night embraced them, promising new beginnings and shared adventures ahead. John Davis woke before dawn. Light shimmered on his window. Today he would see Azura depart. His heart felt heavy. He dressed quickly and left his quarters. In the courtyard, he found Azura and Lavrakim. Azura wore a pale lavender robe. Her braid rested over her shoulder. She held a small satchel. John bowed. Azura smiled softly. "Good morning, John Davis," Lavra translated. Azura inclined her head. John spoke gently. Will you be all right? Lavra translated. Azura looked at the sky. 2 moons still rested low. I must return to my world, Lavra translated. But my heart stays here with you. John felt tears warm his cheeks. He stepped forward and offered a small box wrapped in silk. Azura took it and untied the ribbon. Inside was a compass made of silver and crystal. It glowed faintly. Lavra translated his words. So you can find your way back to me. Double quotes. Azura single quotes. Eyes glowed. She pressed the compass to her chest. Thank you, John Davis, Lavra translated. She touched his hand. John felt steady warmth. They walked to the landing pad. A sleek shuttle awaited. Its engines hummed softly. Crew members stood at attention. As Azura approached the shuttle, she paused. She turned and faced John. Lavra translated her words. Our time together has been a gift. I will carry your kindness with me always. John bowed deeply. He spoke through tears. Farewell, Azura. I will wait for your return. Lavra translated. Azura nodded. Lavra translated. Until we meet again, John Davis. She stepped into the shuttle. John watched through the glass as the engines roared. The shuttle lifted, glowing in the morning light. Azura pressed her hand against the window. John pressed his against the outside glass. For a moment, their palms aligned, then the shuttle rose and disappeared beyond the stars. John stood alone on the platform. He felt a gentle breeze and the first rays of sun. He held the compass, its soft light pulsing. He whispered, I will find my way back to you, Azura, always. As he turned, Lavra approached. She placed a hand on his shoulder. The Queen has asked me to thank you once more. She believes your hearts are linked by hope. She smiled kindly. John nodded. Thank you, Lavra, he said. He looked to the sky, which had brightened to pale blue. That evening, John held the compass in his quarters. He traced the crystal needle. It pointed toward the stars. He thought of Azura and their shared days. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out a fresh journal and a pen. He wrote, To Azura, my queen and my friend, our bond spans worlds and time. Whether on Earth or Asteria, my heart will follow yours until we meet again, John Davis. He closed the journal. With one last look at the compass, he placed it safely in his uniform pocket. Experience had changed him. He felt hopeful and strong. No matter the distance, their promise remained, under the twin moons of a distant sky. A human officer waited and hoped for the return of the alien queen whose beauty had left him speechless.